Your work, in my view, is hugely valuable to the TRE community. You've worked for quite a long time now with primary school children, meaning children under the age of 16. So first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit about you and your school, and who these children were, what kind of stressful backgrounds that they come from.
The school where I worked for many years is located in the middle of Cape Town, but many of the children come from townships very close to the school, where on a daily basis they are being traumatized in terms of what they're seeing, what they're hearing gunshots go off at night, during the day. A lot of them have come from backgrounds where they've been traumatized through domestic violence, domestic abuse. Drug abuse is a huge problem with many parents. I spent almost 2 years working with TRE as a tool to help children. Probably touched the lives of 60 children. It's really important that when a child starts the TRE process, which is the healing process, that they feel safe. And a really easy way to create that safety for the child is that the teacher and the parent makes a real concerted effort to have a daily check-in with the child, just to find out where they are at in their emotional journey. So what's really easy to do, especially for teachers, is to have a little piece of paper with a smiley face. You have a picture of a smiley face available for a child, you've got a sad face, and then you have a face that really doesn't have any clear emotion. And the kids will be able to point, especially younger kids, they will point to which of those faces they are feeling at that moment. And that's all you as a teacher really needs to know. You just need to be able to check in with the child. You don't need to give them any interpretation about or advice. They don't want to hear that. They just want you to communicate to you as the teacher how they are feeling. And most children have a very poor emotional vocabulary. If you ask them how they're feeling, they'll look at you and they say, fine. And the TRE journey is a wonderful opportunity to start enlarging that vocabulary. So giving a child a few options. Are you happy or are you sad? Or are you feeling a little bit anxious? Do you know what the word anxious means? And if they say yes, then I often ask them, can you tell me a time when you were feeling anxious? Just to check in that they really understand what the word means. Because often children use words and they don't have an idea or a real clue about what the word really means. So the older children, you can start putting words out on pieces of paper similar to the ones that I had the smiley faces on. And you're actually doing them a favor by increasing their vocabulary, but also getting them to a place where they can actually accurately describe how they're feeling, instead of going through their whole life saying, I'm fine, when I'm really not fine.
What I'm hearing is that this is an opportunity to actually give them an awareness of the emotion and also the actual vocabulary to describe it. So that's very empowering. That's really, really lovely.
But the importance for a practitioner to be so grounded that when a child walks into the room, they can absolutely feel safe, that they know that whatever happens, you are going to be able to be calm, you're not going to get triggered by what they might have to process, and that just goes such a long way to creating an environment of real safety for a child. The other thing that's really important to remember is that most traumatized children have had trauma inflicted on them by those older and bigger, and therefore you as a practitioner are older and bigger, and therefore I always would sit on the floor with a child, because then we were both on the carpet and the child never felt threatened or ill at ease. So the other thing that I always give to children when they are tremoring is a blanket. And a blanket helps to create safety, especially for children who have been sexually abused. Many children would actually put the blanket right over their entire bodies. And when I knew that there was a child who preferred to tremor in this way, we would set up a contract right at the beginning. And I would say to him, when I come to you and I call your name, then you're going to pull the blanket down so I can see your eyes and check in to make sure that you're doing okay. Ray is a wonderful child. He was born into a dysfunctional family. His mom was a drug addict, and he spent a lot of time literally living in a cardboard box under a bridge. And his grandparents then took custody of him and tried their best to provide a stable home. This really played a hugely negative role in his time at school, and he found it hard to concentrate, and he became really almost quite sort of antisocial in many ways.
My name is Ray. I'm 11 years old. Before I started TRE, it was very depressing for me. I never knew my mother, and my father was never there. So then a few years after, I went to Mrs. K and said, "Miss, I'm having a bad day," and she introduced me to TRE. And after that, it made my life better, and the problems that came to me, I could solve. Before this, I couldn't solve the problems that came to my life. It was difficult. But now I'm finding things easier. And the thing that I think about TRE, it's better than any psychiatrist I've been to doing it. It didn't help me as much as TRE has helped me. And TRE has changed my life forever, and that's what I have to say. Thank you, TRE.
So now that we're talking about the actual discharge process, I think that many people will be interested to know how you managed any freezing, flooding and dissociation, how often it occurred. I mean, how frequent is it? Was it problematic, especially seeing these children are traumatized kids? So give us your experience of all of that.
I had very few instances where children went into freezing, flooding or dissociation, which I found quite interesting, because some of them had some severe trauma. But what I think is really, really important to be aware of and to understand is the role of self-regulation. And I taught every single child how to self-regulate within the first session. So they would get some tremors, and I'd say, okay, now I'm going to show you the off switch, how to bring the tremors to an end. So they could experience that before they were in a place of either flooding or freezing or dissociating. And then what was really interesting was they would just instinctively and naturally self-regulate themselves. And they would literally stick their little legs out. They would count literally 1, 2, 3, and the legs would back up again. And they
contrary. And in fact, I have to say that was my experience working with Children's SOS Village. We didn't have not one episode of children who couldn't tremor with being frozen, or children who flooded or ran out the room and said that this was unpleasant. So I was also happily surprised.
Okay, Lassandra, another very special little girl, also born into an unfortunate circumstances. She had a very great fear of her mother for good reason. The grade 4 teacher said to me, "You really have to try and do something to help this little girl." And the TRE has absolutely changed her life. And you'll see in the video, you will not believe that happy smiley face that you see right at the end was something that nobody ever saw at school until TRE came into her life.
Hello, my name is Lassandra. Before TRE, I felt like a little person in a big world. And I felt like everything was falling down and I was carrying the world on my shoulders. TRE has changed my life a lot now. I'm such a happy person. I'm a big person and I'm not carrying the world. And me and my mother, we have a good relationship since I started TRE. And I've learned that I'm confident, encouraging, helping, and nice to people. Bring me chocolate for Christmas!
Generally, when children started their process, they tremored for a very short time and they needed to integrate a long time. I had a little boy who tremored for about 5 minutes and then he slept for an hour and a half. I just sat in the space and while he slept. And there were many children who early in their their processing would need just to lie quietly for half an hour. And as the process and their discharge of trauma became less then their integration time also got less, until I had children just coming in to do a quick little shake, and then they'd jump up and want to jump on the trampoline, and then they were done.
There is rather, as the practitioner, one has to have a higher degree of awareness and be very observant of what the child might need. And that if you are working with a child who's been very traumatized, you can expect them to need more integration of that. And you can also expect that the session will be shorter.
Working one-on-one is great. It gives you an opportunity to really just watch the child and to check in with them more often than you would with an adult. Because they're discharging stress so quickly and trauma so quickly, they can go into an overwhelm. So it's really important that you need to check in, make sure that, so when you have a group of children, you really need eyes in the front of your head, the back of your head, the side of your head, because it's really hard to be able to get to each child and to check in on them all the time. And with a lot of energy in the room, you have to be really grounded, and you have to have a very strong awareness, and you need to be able to follow your intuition and know exactly who you need to be going to check in on, etc.
For me, it doesn't sound like a good idea to be working with traumatized children in groups. I just don't see why that would even be necessary. You know, what's one trying to achieve? Unless, of course, I suppose, like the Children's SOS Village, there were so many, there were 120 of them, that we had to work in groups of 8, but they were family groups, and they were safe in those family groups. They weren't exposed to outsiders. But having said that, I would have felt, if I had to give any advice at all, I would have felt that one needs to focus with the child alone. And by alone, meaning you don't even bring in other family members. You know, don't bring in parents, don't bring in brothers and sisters. You know, this idea that, just work with the family as a group. I don't know about that. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I think it's invaluable for the child's process that a traumatized child is worked with on just with you as a practitioner and the child. It becomes really complicated, especially with family dynamics, as you've said, to have other members of the family who might be aware of the abuse, or they might even be the abuser.
Wow, well, Wendy, your experience and your wisdom and your skills have touched the lives of so many children at that school. I know that they were heartbroken when you left at the end of last year, and I know that you left so that you could devote your time full-time to TRE and bringing TRE to others. And I'm deeply grateful for all the experiences that you've been willing to share with me in particular, and that I can integrate this into the teaching and the training that I'm going to do around the world. And I want to thank you from everybody who's going to hear this talk. Thank you.